The end of the year is coming. We know it, we feel it. The calendar doesn't lie. It's basically here. And with the end of the year, it is the time for the end of the year lists. And we all love them, don't we? I've already talked about my favorite nonfiction. I'm obviously going to be talking about my favorite fiction, but apparently the world doesn't revolve around me, which is something shocking for me to find out about. It really doesn't revolve around me. So I figured, let's do our first group project together. Let's settle around and do something together. And I figured, what better way to really foster a great community than to ask you, my subscribers, what your favorite book of the year was. It'll be fun for me to talk about mine, but I'm actually highly curious of what your favorite books of the year were. So my basic idea was to just kind of, I started with my Patreon. I asked my patrons what their favorite books were, then I talked about it in a video. I asked people what their favorite books were, and then I put out a community post asking people what their favorite books were, and then I took all that data and I sat on 459 books to siphon through to see what the top 10 would be, which ones garnered the most votes, most attraction. Very easy to see how I put the list together. But my intention was to start with 10, but there was just so many one-offs. I got to 8 places, but there's gonna be multiple submissions for each number, so you'll understand what I mean when I get into it. I'm going to break it up into 2 sections. I'm going to spend more time on the fiction just because that was the highest volume of submissions that I had were fiction, but I did also have some nonfiction, so I want to talk about them. Let's do them. So let's start with it. We have The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Read it this year for a book club, was also on my runner-ups for top nonfiction picks, so I understand that. Hidden Valley Road. I was a big fan of this book when I read it. This is about schizophrenic brothers. 6 schizophrenic brothers, I believe, in a family of 12. Very harrowing experience. They just made a documentary about it, but I read this, and this was very scary, very sad, very, very frightening to be confined in your own body like that. Destiny of the Republic. I forget what this one's about. What is this one about? This was a random one that I was shocked, but I love a good presidential biography, and this is about James A. Garfield's rise to prominence and unlikely rise to presidency. I was about to say presidentship, his rise to presidentship. I was surprised to see that on there, but I think my audience knows me well. They know that I love a good historical book about American history that might put some people to sleep, but will definitely keep me away. De Profundis. This is a book that I am really keen to read. This is about Oscar Wilde's love letters. It's not about, it is Oscar Wilde's love letters to his lover. I also looked this up because I wasn't sure what genre this book was. And when I looked it up, there was a whole article about the 100 greatest nonfiction books of all time. It was published in 2017, so it's obviously a little bit dated, but that made me think, should I do a video about that? Should I talk about the 100 greatest nonfiction books of all time? A reaction? Let me know if you'd like that, because that's right up my alley. That's right up there. Doppelganger, which is a relatively new book, I believe. I think this is either this year or last year it was published. I've been seeing so many people reading this book in New York City, and I really didn't take the time to look it up, but then I did. Naomi Klein, I believe, is the author, and she is taking the whole idea of like conspiracy and people who resemble you or people who you're often mistaken for, and going down this long rabbit hole into what that entails. And interesting. I'm interested to read about that, actually. I'm interested to see her spin on things. I think that would be a fun book. And obviously, 2 people loved it. 2 people loved it. All About Love by Bell Hooks, a very famous book, a very famous author. I've heard wonderful things about it, and I don't doubt that it's wonderful. Year of the Monkey by Patti Smith also makes an appearance on there. This is like a mixture of fiction and nonfiction. Because it's Patti Smith, I'm gonna say that it's more nonfiction. I've read it. It talks more about her relationships with people that she loves. It's like more of these hazy recollections, I would say, is kind of the best way to describe this. So yeah, sure, nonfiction, for sure. Say Nothing. Oh, you'll come to find out there's a lot of Irish on here. There's a lot of Irish on here. Bad Irish accent, but trying my hardest to get by on it. There's a lot of Irish novelists on here. If you get what I'm saying. This isn't by an Irish novelist. Patrick Radden Keefe is the author. I've read a couple of his pieces, and I'm very interested to read Say Nothing. It's all about the IRA, I believe. Between Two Kingdoms. Do I know what this one is about? Ah, yes, Between Two Kingdoms. I've seen this book so many times in bookstores, and I honestly get it confused with Nomad Life or Nomad. What was that movie that came out with what's-her-face? Frances McDormand. There was also a memoir, Nomadland. I get this confused because the book covers are eerily similar, which I understand if they're about the same thing. But this deeply moving memoir of illness and recovery that traces one young woman's journey from diagnosis to remission to re-entry into normal life. Sounds great. Sounds great. Love a good memoir, and it won't be the only memoir on this list. All right, so that's it for the books with 2 attendees to the party saying, this is the best party I've ever been to. Now we're going to get into the runner-up for nonfiction top, and then we're going to get to the winner. So the runner-up is Braiding Sweetgrass, which I've heard such popular things about this book. This is a book that is about our relationship with land and the beauty of what we can achieve if we just listen to the land. I haven't read it yet, but I really want to. I really, really want to. And number 1 for nonfiction this year. I was actually surprised by this, but at the same time, not surprised. And that is Down the Drain by Julia Fox. Yeah, why not? Good for her. She's number 1 on my list. That's great. 4 people said that they loved this. This was in their top 5 books of the year. If you don't know who Julia Fox is, she is kind of a prominent figure in the social worlds of cultural figures right now. She's a big fashion icon. She basically just speaks her mind, and she's always been in like the New York art scene, but then she really just exploded with some of her crazy outfits and just way of expressing herself. So I guess it's a really great memoir. From what I've heard, everybody who has read it actually had a pretty great experience with it and has nothing but positive things to say, so I imagine it's great. So those are my top nonfiction reads of the year from you, as voted by you. As I said before, this was supposed to be 10, but that didn't work out. So 8th spot is books that had 3 votes to their name. And we have a couple of books, so I'm just gonna run through those and see which ones you might have added to the list. So, the first one, in 8th place, is Demon Copperhead. This book took over, right? This book was so highly applauded. This is a 2024 release, is that correct? I'm gonna say it's a 2022 or a 2023, I think. I remember this being everywhere. I didn't take the time to ever look this up, but now that I know what it's about, I'm so intrigued and so invested in finding this and reading it. This is all about Appalachia, the United States Appalachia, and a young boy named Demon Copperhead. I thought that this was an English book. I think I was mixing up Copperfield, something like that. I thought that this was an English book. Not to say that I'm not interested in English stories. I'm very, very interested. I just totally was wrong about this. So this is all about Appalachia, which I am so interested in. Beloved by Toni Morrison, classic Toni Morrison. I would say that Toni Morrison was the number 1 author on this list. She had the most submissions, and she had the most absolute pouring out of love for her books on this list. 1Q84 by Murakami. I've read, I think it's a good big book, and I've talked about that before. I think it's a very good big book, and I think once you finish it, it's like, yes. Yes, I did. Then we have a new, I know that this one is for sure a 2024 book, and that is All Fours by Miranda July. I've talked about July before on this channel. I've read a couple of July's books, and All Four was the most recent in July's library of books. This is about a premenopausal woman, I believe, who kind of reawakens. And I've heard nothing but really positive things about it. I feel like this was a standout in the 2024 year as far as releases, and as shown by you, it most definitely is. If I have something on my teeth, don't tell me, or do tell me, please. The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, an Irish author, who you will notice again, Ireland. You're gonna see Ireland on here. Ireland, this is a comedic comedic book, right? Foster by Claire Keegan, Ireland. Ireland. And I'm just going to say this right now, this might not be the last time she'll be on this list. Hello. And then we have The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector, her final novel. I didn't realize that. I was doing research on that, and I didn't realize that that was her final novel. Clarice Lispector also made a lot of entries onto this list, but more of individual books as opposed to a huge yes on a single book. But The Hour of the Star was her biggest submission onto this incredibly important list. Now we are into the 7th place. And again, we have a couple of books that garnered 4 votes in total. The first one starting with is White Teeth by Zadie Smith. You know that I love Zadie Smith, and you know that I love White Teeth. What a fabulous way to start the 7th spot. Zadie Smith is not Irish. No. Great book about generational lives and interweavings. Then we have Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck was also submitted multiple times on this list. Again, will not be the last time that you see him on this list. I have not read this book yet, but I have picked up the book. Please don't come at me. Please don't come at me. Then we have Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy, a book that I have not read, an author who I have not read, but more of a classic author. This was, I think, published in 1874 or something like that. And very interestingly enough, I was researching this, and it's all written from the female protagonist perspective. And what I am going through now, I'm reading Madame Bovary for my Patreon book club, and it's so strange to me that around this time period, the late 1800s, that a lot of these men authors were writing female protagonists in these love triangles and these obscene ways, and it's just interesting to me. But I believe that that book is all about a tango of affairs. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, a very, very sad story of a girl who does not feel beautiful and adequate enough in her skin. A stunning piece, and I definitely agree with that being on this list. The Count of Monte Cristo. This is for people who said, yes, I read it. Absolutely, yes, I read it, and I'm proud I did, bitch. I'm proud I did. This is a big one. I don't know if I'll ever get to this, but I am so happy to see that people love it, and I know that it's a great book. I know that when people finish it, it makes their top favorite books of all time, so I have no doubt that this is a fabulous, fabulous read, and I would love to get to it. And I should just speak it out into fruition now. You can do it, Anna. You can do anything. You can do it. The last book on this number 7 installment is Lonesome Dove. I never knew of this book until this year when I made my most popular books of each decade list, and when I made my biggest books, big books that are satisfying and easy to read. So many people commented this. I started to think that it was a bot. I was like, this is definitely a bot. I have never heard of this book before. And now I'm so keen to read it. It's a Western. It's a Western. And I'm very keen to read it. And again, 4 people said this is one of the greats. One of the greats. I love it. It's a biggin, but it's a good biggin. Now we are getting into the top 6 places, which have smaller amounts of submissions into it, and it's going to be much more refined and much more singular. Number 6, with 5 votes, is The Secret History. A favorite, a pleaser of the people. I agree, it's a great book. It's a lot of fun. I've visited a lot of the places that this book took place in, and I am fully obsessed every time I read it. I've reread it twice now, and you know what? I'll probably reread it again. Sue me. That's a great book. Murder, and Lust, and Dark Academia, which this vest belongs to. Number 5. The 5th place of these books, which each got 6 votes each. Giovanni's Room. James Baldwin. James Baldwin also had so many submissions, so many people who appreciate and love James Baldwin's work. This was the first year that I read a Baldwin book, and it was The Fire Next Time, so it was nonfiction, but I'm very keen to get into his fiction. I've talked about that so much before, and I would like to read Giovanni's Room. This is about a man in Paris falling in love with an Italian or an American man, I think. I can't remember, but I know it's just a very cherished novel, and I would love to read it. The next one that kind of shocked me. I will say, towards the top of this list, I kind of anticipated which ones would be under the umbrella of favorites, but this one actually surprised me. And this is a book that wasn't really on my radar for majorly reading anytime soon, but now it is, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men. This was published in 1995. I thought that this was a much more recent book. This was originally published in French and was translated, but this is about a group of women who are imprisoned and are ultimately let go, I think, are left to kind of figure out why they're there, what happened to them. It's more of a science fiction book, I believe, but I'm really interested in that. I was taking a lot of time looking into that, and I really would love to read that. And again, people loved it. 6 people. Yes, absolutely. And then one that really needs absolutely no addressing, because you've heard me talk about it 1.5 million times before, so let's talk about it 1.5 million more time. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. My favorite book of all time. It's great. Do I need to say more? All right, we're into the top 4 books of the year for you and you and you and you and you. With 7 votes to its name, we have Sula by Toni Morrison. A Morrison that I have not read, a Morrison that I feel like is getting a lot of traction. I feel like for the longest time I saw The Bluest Eye as Morrison's most popular book, the most suggested book, but within recent years, I feel like Sula is the big one that so many people are talking about. Again, from my understanding, it's taking the idea of a young girl feeling inadequate, feeling like she's not needed in a place, and examining life through her eyes. And I think that that's such a strong way to tell a story, such a vulnerable way, and such an important way to tell a story, because children are ultimately the purest of souls, and if you tell a story through a child, you're really showing the most base and most visceral way of telling something. And if it's a Morrison book, I'm sure it's great. Number 3, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. A book that I read this year for my Patreon book club, a book that I'm very happy that I read this year, a book that I honestly never thought that I would read, but it got sent to me by a great viewer of this channel, somebody who I appreciate their book choices quite a bit, and I read it, and I'm so happy that I did. This is such a fantastic book. Again, similar to Morrison, telling a story through a child's eyes is such a great way to tell a story, because we've all been children. We can all relate to being a child. 8 people said they loved it, and I am a part of that 8. Not my actual vote being in there, but you know. Alrighty, now we're getting into the top 2 spots with 3 submissions, so let's see which one comes out on top. Is there going to be a tie? Is that what's going to happen? Who knows? Keep watching. Number 2 with 9 votes each. We have a tie. That's where the tie is. We have a 2024 submission by Irish. I think you might know who it is. Guess right now. 2024 Irish novelist. Who is it? Who is it? You probably guessed. Sally Rooney with Intermezzo. I'm gonna be honest with you. I really didn't know what this book was about, but I looked it up, as one does, and I found out what it's about. It's about 2 brothers grieving after the death of a father, I think. Is that right? Something like that. It's definitely about 2 brothers. But when I Googled it, the first thing that came up was this pizzeria. And I'm thinking, this pizzeria is probably getting a lot of business for people just Googling. That's exactly how people type. Googling what Intermezzo is about. And then they're like, whoa, that pizzeria looks great. Honey, are you craving pizza tonight? Yeah, I'm craving pizza. Let's have pizza. Okay. Intermezzo. 9 votes. People loved it. And number 2 on the 2 list, we have Stoner by John Williams. I also read this year. Oh, it's a great book. I cried like a little baby, like the little baby that I am. All about a man going through life, the decisions that he makes, and the reticence to really live a life fulfilled. and what that means, just being a normal man. I loved it. All right, number one. Your number one pick of the year. Are you ready? Do you feel like this list has done you justice? Do you feel like you are seen? Do you feel like this is the year of great books? I need to know before I divulge into number one. All right, I'm ready to talk about it. Number one, Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, another fantastic Irish author. The Irish are doing it. Yes, yes, yes. And it's so interesting to me because this is such a small book. I've read this, or I've listened to it on audiobook. Also, this is having a lot of prominence right now because its movie counterpart is about to come out, and Cillian Murphy is in it, and we all love him. I don't think there's a single person that's like, no, I think he's mid. He's great. But this book is so tiny, but it holds such a punch. And I've been a big proponent. I like reading a lot of bigger books now, but I've always been a huge proponent of smaller books, being able to really just harness in what the author wants to say. And if an author can write a short story and have it captivate so many people, I think that that is such a, to have that skill and to have that power with your words is just unparalleled. And I agree. I think that that's a fabulous book. So there you have it, guys. Those are your tops, top of the pops, baby, for the year 2024. Let me know if you would like me to continue doing this. I had a lot of fun gathering this little intel in my very exciting Numbers app, just gathering all that intel. And some of these you might see a crossover. I can't reveal yet, but you might see a crossover on my list for my top 10 of the year. That's crazy. That's so crazy. Anyway, you guys are wonderful. You're fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for giving all of these wonderful results. I enjoyed looking over all these books. I'll see you in the next one.